Access granted.
Boy, I swear, one of these days, those videos are going to work right. Not sure. I've talked to StreamYard about them, and for whatever reason, after sitting on a chat with reps from StreamYard for a couple hours, we couldn't get a video to play right. It's amazing. Been reformatted, optimized, unreal. So, good evening, everyone. We got a few minutes before we really get started here. For those of you who don't know, my name's Matt, and I wrote a comic book called Sector 7 that I co-created with my partner, Ron Mozicki. We are in the process of kind of retooling our campaign strategies, and we're going to be rolling out some new information on that soon. So if you guys have been following us, don't fret. That is not dead. That is coming again real soon here. And like I said, we have an awesome product. We're going to make it a reality. But it's really about the story, and it's about the giant monsters. That's why I do this. I am a comic book fan, but first and foremost, I'm a giant monster fan. So with that said, here we're just gonna wait a couple of minutes until my partner in crime for tonight, John, arrives, and we're gonna discuss some Godzilla stuff. Yeah, we're gonna have a little bit of fun tonight. So thank you for joining us. If you guys are watching this on replay, thanks for showing us some love there. We're gonna keep doing this and keep improving a little each and every week. We'll try and get these technological snafus worked out there. But what a week. I mean, really, it's just been an incredible ride, and it's really mind blowing. I know several of us keep commenting on just how much stuff is coming out to look forward to. It is absolutely unreal. So we're going to talk about that some tonight. On one other note, um, we have long time ago, what feels like ages ago, we had a little website called Kaijutopia, and I've once again acquired that name, kaijutopia.com. Nothing there on the website yet. We're still kind of imagining what that is going to look like, um, and I don't know yet. We're gonna have some plans for it, but it's gonna be great no matter what. So keep an eye out for that in the future, and of course, you can follow me on Twitter at the handles in the uh, by my name there. And my good friend has arrived. Hello, sir. How are you?
What's up, buddy? I'm good, man. How are you?
You surviving this heat wave? Do you? Is there a heat wave where you're at?
We've pretty much been through two in the last couple of months, and it's all right now. It's raining. What about you,
Oh
man?
man, I am. Today has been just so warm. Like I'm like sitting here going, man, where was this day all of August? Because August was like cold and raining the
Yeah.
whole month up here. Here now, today I was in my classroom upstairs, and it was just no AC in the building, and everyone's just dying. So
Hmm.
we're getting through today. And we have Jacob in the chat. Evening.
What's
Thanks
up,
for
Jacob?
joining us. And yeah, so I haven't had a chance to really talk live with you yet. What are your initial thoughts on the trailer that dropped on Monday night?
I'm a huge fan, and I'm also trying to get StreamYard to work. So I think you should start us off. If that's
Okay,
okay.
will do. Yeah, StreamYard. To your point, has been frustrating for me. I'm not really sure why it can't play a simple video. Like
Right.
I have a decent laptop with a decent video card. Should be no reason for it not to play those. So I'm frustrated with it myself. But
It's going to make me.
oh, we lost him. And absolutely, Jacob. It was my pleasure. I plan to write some more stuff for you guys. Hopefully, some people get something out of it. And yeah, minus one does look pretty great. I can't lie. So we'll just give John a moment to pop back in. Recently, if you haven't checked out, Jacob runs Kaiju United, and one, he's been a huge supporter of us in Sector Seven since we kind of got started, and I hope he feels likewise about us in Kaiju United. We really appreciate him over there, and he's just been awesome to get to know over these past few months. So if you haven't checked out Kaiju United, please go check out the Facebook group, visit the website. They're doing some great things, and you can read my article on Big Bash there now. So with that said, um, I likewise, John, as you alluded to, I am a huge fan of this trailer. I mean, it looks like we're finally getting the movie we kept, the movie we thought we were getting maybe once we saw the trailer in 2014. Um, it just had this dark vibe, and this really haunting type of atmosphere to it. And then we got a very different movie. I felt like one that really didn't carry that same type of emotional weight, particularly after the death of Joe Ford in that movie. But with that said, this movie looks really awesome. I love the design. I can't say enough about it. It looks incredible. I have almost nothing bad to say about this trailer and movie so far. And so just watching it, the music, the atmosphere, the dialogue so far has just been absolutely incredible. Um, I love the comment at the end. A lot of folks have pointed out that monster will never forgive us. Um, And I think that's a really interesting take. One is seems to be the most angry Godzilla since GMK for sure. Um, I think Shin Godzilla, while certainly menacing, didn't seem to demonstrate much emotion one way or another. It seemed more almost like an natural disaster type of situation where you saw him coming. It was terrifying, but it was more like just get out of the way. And Godzilla was almost a set piece in some ways rather than a character. It was just kind of interesting to me how the contrast is there.
That's a really good way to describe it, and that's how they build the film too. How would Japan in 2015, 16, 17 respond to a natural disaster that was Godzilla? Basically, it's
Right.
on with everything that happens with the typhoons and the earthquakes and everything. That's just, I mean, Japan has really been through it in the last 2 decades, and so Godzilla is a really perfect allegory for natural disasters as well as man-made, and he's been both all the way through the Toho series. So yeah, I mean you're absolutely right. I'm looking at the poster over there and the gigantic X Plus, and it's just like he was a set piece. He was a cool set piece, but yeah, he wasn't like on the level of like GMK where you literally like see him smirk and just
Right.
nuke a bunch of people or slam his tail into a hospital just to
Yeah.
kill that one girl. This Godzilla is very angrily biting a train and throwing it, and not just like walking down a street, but like actively stepping where the people are. So it's if we're about to get a Godzilla, a Japanese Godzilla that is just 1,000% pissed off at mankind, oh man, this is going to be one hell of a ride. To sound corny, but like it really is going to be nuts.
Yeah, I completely agree. What do you think of the CGI so far that you've seen? For me, I've really been impressed with it.
Same.
Again, going back to Shin Godzilla, I felt like he looked good. It's particularly the textures on him looked good, and things like that. But there were some moments when he was in motion that looked kind of awkward, and I think that's actually why he had a lot of that just sort of like stone face for lack of a better term. He kind of didn't show a whole lot because I think they were struggling to do that. It seems like they may have alleviated that problem some. What are you seeing here?
Dude, I agree. That was one of the first thoughts I had. It was like, holy shit, okay, this looks like very animalistic, natural movement, which is awesome. Because Shin, I think they wanted to make him stoic, but I also think that may have been a 50-50 decision with technical limitations. Because we've all watched Toho struggle with CGI for decades. I mean, it like Shin Godzilla was far from the first time we saw Godzilla in CG, and the best we ever saw Godzilla in CGI was not even in a Godzilla movie. It was in the Always movie,
Right.
in a dream sequence. And so that's, the first thing that tells you that this movie, just like Godzilla the Ride, is in excellent hands. But that's getting off track. But, like going back like in G2K or anything else where you see Godzilla swimming and the CGI actually works because it's limited and it's in the water and it's hazy. But I think Toho has stuck to suitmation with their Godzilla films for two reasons for a very long time, up until 2004 anyway, we'll say, with like the original run. One being for the classic sense of tokusatsu to set them apart from everything else, like the 1998 movie where we had a CGI Godzilla, which honestly was very convincing for the time. And B, because they are just very aware of their own technical limitations. Like uh, our American Godzilla TriStar 1998 was made. That's what 6 years before Final Wars, and the Zilla that they put in that movie looks like he came out of a PlayStation One game. And that wasn't because they wanted him to look like that. They wanted to show the difference between suitmation and CGI, yes, but they also could have they. To me, it just kind of it exemplified how far back their technology was to render a full scale creature. Um, and so we've just kind of waited this long for Japan to catch up, and it's a strange thing to me because they're incredible movies come out of Japan. Some of the best films ever made come out of Japan, and some of I mean, Tokusatsu had a massive impact and was very, very influential to everyone from Peter Jackson to George Lucas creating Star Wars. A lot of the miniature work that he did and that Buck Rogers did before him, a lot of that was very much inspired by the Tokusatsu boom in Japan. But when it comes to CGI, for whatever reason, they've just never been cutting edge. So to very long-windedly get back to your question,
No, it was great.
I think that it's really, really fantastic to see that the CGI is not going to be distracting, because that trailer, I think, showcased enough to show us like this is going to be cool as shit to watch, and you're not going to have those really jarring scenes like you did in Shin, where it just completely takes you out of the moment because the movement is just so unnatural.
Right. No, I love your points there, and you're right. Final Wars Zilla was even though I love that movie, I'm a fan. It's probably, and I might get criticized for this, it's probably top 2 for the Millennium series for
Do
me.
it, man. I love it. That's what movies are made for enjoying.
Actually, and oddly enough, my first may surprise some folks is G2K. I love Godzilla 2000. And again, bad CGI, but
I actually think the CGI is better in that movie than it is in Final Wars. I actually think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think you're probably pretty on point with that, actually. Other than let's see, Manda uses a bit of CGI in the beginning, but again, the water kind of and the quick cuts tend to mask it a little bit, I think. But regardless, you're right. Zilla is probably just a hair above like Yongari 99 at the time, and like that was not good. Not good. Don't give me no hate on Yongari, but that reptilian movie for you, those of you who will stumble across it in the US, it was not a masterpiece by any means, especially not in the effects department. But getting back to -1, I really love and appreciate at like some of the added just little sprinkles they've put there visually. Like when he takes that step, you feel the weight as the pavement like cracks and just, I mean, you see it like lift upwards, and it's like, wow, that is cool. Like,
oh man, it's awesome.
Yeah, like
we should totally pull up the trailer, and if you're game, kind of go through it.
Now, if we can actually get it to play,
yeah, if we can get StreamYard to cooperate. I had to log in and log out for absolutely no reason, and now it's finally streaming on Screenunk on Facebook and letting me be here. And my camera is still making me look like I've got a fucking tractor beam on my face, but it is what it is.
Hey, you know what? I was just like, John just radiates light. Like you just look and
it's all this shirt that Nev did, man. Shout out to Nev. I don't know if he's I'll have to send this to him, but he did these Daimajin shirts a while ago and sold them at G-Fest to help out with his son, who is just as kick-ass as a human being as he is, and is going through a cancer scare right now. So we grabbed some quotes from Nev, and this shirt just rules, and it's very special for that reason. But also, I love his art. Shout out to Nev.
Absolutely. Well, and absolutely. If you've got a link or anything like that where we can throw it in the video description, once
I really appreciate you, dude. They are sold out. Is the good
They're
news.
sold out. Oh, all right. Well, we'll find another way. If there's a GoFundMe, whatever, keep us posted on that.
Yeah,
We'd love
to appreciate you.
Show some love their way. So let's go ahead and see if this will cooperate with me, and we'll see if we can't watch this trailer here. I'm gonna full screen it on. I'm gonna play it through YouTube, so hopefully
it'll cooperate.
Yeah, hopefully it'll cooperate. So let's see here.
Oh, hell yeah. Man, even just right there off the bat, like seeing the Toho symbol come up is just the best thing in the world.
Yeah, it really starts off kind of hot. Whoop, I accidentally hit pause there, but it starts off intense.
Yeah, man, pause it. I mean, whenever you want, just pause it and we'll chat it up. Like, look at that. It's such a good shot.
Oh. This scene, You have to be in awe a little bit of the cinematography here because her face, like everything from I love everything about this. You see the city in the background, you see Godzilla. I mean, just so intimidating. Like in the reflection there, her face, like it's almost like this combination of like disbelief and like she's got the furrowed brow. Like, am I seeing like what I'm actually seeing? Like the question is that Godzilla, like almost like she knows I love this shot. Like,
Yeah, it's
wow.
tremendous. And she also she's using the anglicized pronunciation of Godzilla. Like she
Right.
punches a hard L in there, which is very rare. I don't think we've ever heard that really as purposefully in a Toho film, which I think is super cool. Yeah, man, the cinematography. Oh my god. So I'm sure everyone that's watching this is familiar, but Takashi Yamazaki-san, who is directing, also did Godzilla the Ride, and he did the second movie. He didn't do all of them. He did the second one, but he's like a Peter Jackson for us. Someone that he's not pumping out films constantly, but he's done a lot of work and he's extremely well respected as a filmmaker in Japan. And oh man, this trailer is just like a showcase for what a tremendous filmmaker he is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the shots are absolutely gorgeous. We'll go ahead and watch a little bit more here. And
Oh god,
like I gotta just try and go back a few frames here
chill bump.
because like look at that. I mean, even paused, the textures looks there. It's paused. It's in motion. The textures look good. The mouth looks good and detailed, even on the inside. There's all kinds of interesting textures. Like it is a just an incredible amount of care went into that. Like
Dude, so
looking at
true.
the neck. I mean, every bump there's really not much to complain about here. I'm really impressed.
Look here, man. Look at that. Oh man, even just on his tail and his feet have those really interesting textures too. And that's one of my favorite things they've done with this design. They did it with Godzilla the Ride too, obviously before this, because it's more or less the same, just tweaked and improved. And I think we've talked about that. We both think this is an improved design. But one of the really cool things they've done texture wise is it's not a direct match to any living animal. And that's really
Right.
cool and important when you're doing a monster movie, because if you scale something, like if you give it alligator scales, say, we're immediately your brain's gonna associate that with an alligator. It's like, okay, I know what size an alligator is. Why is it bigger than these people? It shouldn't be. But with this
Right.
Godzilla, they've really given him this very interesting, very unique. It's kind of reptilian, but it's not completely reptilian. It's kind of dinosaurian, but not completely. And so it lets your brain disassociate and be like, okay, holy shit, this thing is massive, instead of trying to identify it with an animal.
Right. And that's actually, you hit on a great point because that's always been one of my gripes about when we try to, Zilla, I have, of course, my own gripe. I love Zilla as his own monster. Don't get me wrong. Before anyone comes to crucify me, I am thankful that it did introduce a generation to Godzilla in kaiju films. But for me, it just wasn't Godzilla. And I've come to appreciate him much more as his own creature. I actually would say I'm a fan of him as his own monster. But whether it be Zilla or whether it be the legendary Godzilla, the skin is always something that's kind of like not really matched up for me. Like when I see the legendary Godzilla, like he looks decent. I appreciate the design for what it is, but I wouldn't call it one of my favorites. And I think part of it is the texture. Like it doesn't seem to
Yeah.
fit what Godzilla was. And Godzilla has always had this sort of otherworldly quality. And I think that's what something that makes not only him, but kaiju in general kind of special is they have this sort of supernatural presence. They defy logic and reason. So to your point, I love what you're saying about the skin texture because it does help contribute to your immersion in the film, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and just this is that scene I was talking about. He steps down and like you look at the whole, and I mean, physics wise, I don't think this is probably very accurate, but it looks super cool and gives him an immense amount of weight in this shot. Like, just absolutely terrifying. You have all the people, like, that is a scary shot. Like,
It
you put
really is.
yourself in their shoes and it's terrifying.
Yeah, even if this isn't completely accurate physics wise, it's a lot more accurate than this not happening. You know, like we've been watching
Right.
Godzilla movies for almost 70 years, and it's very rare that you actually see this much impact, reaction, uh, a physics reaction for every action. There's a equal and opposite reaction. You know, we
Right.
hardly ever see something as heavy as Godzilla just completely decimating what's under his feet because
You're right.
that's
Did
what
he
happens.
was it in 85? Did he step into a subway or something like that? Like,
Mhm.
did
Actually
it
went
go
through into the subway, yeah, which would happen. Yeah,
right? Right. Yeah, his foot actually like dropped right through. I thought that that's what it reminded me of a little bit, but that's one of the few times we really get to see the actual impact of Godzilla's weight shown on screen. So that was really interesting to me. We'll go ahead and play a little bit more for us here. Oof. And
yeah.
just that shot as well. It's very quick, but Matt, look at that. Like,
That very much reminds me of the much more milder version of this that we see in GMK, where he lets his atomic breath loose, for the first time in the movie, and the
yes,
teacher is looking through her window, and she says the atomic bomb, and because
right.
there's a mushroom cloud, and I'm definitely seeing a lot of very GMK esque shots in here, which that's my favorite modern Godzilla movie. So if you're going to take inspiration from something, that's the place to do it because Kaneko-san is every bit as skilled of a filmmaker. So it's
You
really cool
know,
to see some callbacks. And yeah, look at that! Look at that! I don't think I've just looked at this freeze frame. Can you imagine standing on a street and just seeing that?
right.
It brings you straight to the heart of this film, which is the nuclear holocaust.
Right. And do you think the vibe that I'm getting here is they actually drop an atomic weapon trying to kill Godzilla? Is that the idea that you're getting, or
Interesting.
um
I mean, if they did, they kind of missed, um, unless it was
right?
on purpose. I don't know. It strikes me much more as that GMK scene where he lets an atomic blast loose, and then it results in a mushroom cloud.
Sure.
Like
Some folks
I
that
couldn't give you a
associate,
definitive answer because we don't know what happens 5 seconds before this. So I'm very
right,
curious. What do you think?
right. I see at the shot at the end where Godzilla looks really really burned. I'm wondering if that takes place after this explosion is cleared. So I do have at least a thought that it may be a nuke going off. But if that's just his breath, wow, that's a powerful shot.
Yeah,
I love how people aren't even running. They're just like, okay, there's like this almost, you have the gentleman on the right, his arms around his lady there. Like there's almost like this acceptance, like there's nowhere to run.
right. So everything
And
from what you just said, which is a really good point, to how Godzilla is standing, and there's been no like evacuation order or anything. If there's still people there, and the scale of it makes me think that it is his atomic breath, because that would have to be like the very second after any sort of A bomb, H bomb, anything hit, the scale to be that small. Uh,
right.
because the initial, even just the initial explosion from a small A or H bomb would fill
Sure.
this entire frame. In my
No,
in my like slightly educated opinion.
no, actually, you're right. That's a really good point as well. I mean, it could be an oversight, but these people would probably have been warned to evacuate if they
Yeah,
could
you would
anyway.
hope.
You would hope, right? Unless I don't know, maybe that's a plot point.
Yeah,
What's up
yeah,
weird
for
that I
real.
caught over in the bottom right hand side of the screen? I don't know if anyone can see what that symbol or sign is on the wall in the background by where's the Tokyo PX. It's kind of funny. It almost it looks like a military symbol of some kind. But
It's
uh,
got it's got some Resident Evil vibes. It
you
also,
got it. I was thinking
yeah,
umbrella.
like it looks very Umbrella to me, and it also looks like the old school X Plus logo, which is kind of funny. But you're
Yeah,
there. It is interesting.
that's funny. You
We'd
hit
have
the
to do
nail on the head.
we'd have to do some research and see if that symbol means anything to World War II era Japan.
Right. That is really kind of strange though that we both picked up on that from pointing it out.
Yeah,
Even it's really incredible. You even have the shading on the water towers up on the buildings on the left-hand side, like the light source up there is even so they really took some care and thought about angles and everything. To when they were making this effect shot, to me, it's really well done. And just that scene of Godzilla with his back turned gives me vibes of, oh man, it's kind of haunting to me in light of the explosion, but yeah, just a cool shot with him staring at it like that. That is just
that's really impressive.
classic Godzilla. We'll go ahead and move forward a little bit here.
And this is important to note, which I think that a lot of people are going to be familiar, but the wording is right here in the trailer too. That the whole premise of this film is the reason it's called Minus One is because Japan has just experienced their nuclear holocaust, which would bring you down to zero, ultimate, devastation, the absence of anything. And then Godzilla shows up, which makes it somehow even worse. So that's the minus one concept here. And it also kind of has a double entendre, which is cool to think like Godzilla's original creation is blamed on the not necessarily the nuclear holocaust, but the fallout from it, because that film does take place in 54, not 10 years, 9 years prior. But it does kind of say like we're also winding back the clock to say that Godzilla's origins happened here instead of after the nuclear holocaust. Like they're just
Right.
directly
Yeah.
putting everything together.
Yeah, that was one of my first associations of it was that chronologically it took place before 1954. So
Right.
instead of starting at, it's not it's actually minus one, not the baseline. That's interesting. That's a
Yeah.
really great point.
Ditto. That's what I thought too. And I was like, okay, if this is going to be a prequel to 54, that's cool as hell. But it's not. It's its own thing, which honestly is even more exciting.
It is. It really is because almost every and it's hard to blame them because I mean 1954 is I mean it's a classic. It's a pinnacle of filmmaking. I think not just for Japan but really in the history of like the art form. And I really just love that film for what it is, but at the same time, we've gone back to that as the premise to set up so many films for so long, and many of them are amazing, of course. Like the Return of Godzilla, slash 1985 is one of my favorite films in the series, and that. But this feels exciting because it's something that we haven't seen them do before.
Right.
So I'm curious to see what that'll look like. This is interesting too because it feels like the Legendary series has played with this shot several times with Godzilla swimming underneath something. And to me, that was just funny. It seems to have little nods to the Legendary series in this as well. Do you
There's
get that?
definitely a lot of inspiration, which is funny because the entrance, the intro to the Legendary, the first one, 2014, really mirrors the 1998 film in a lot of ways. And then there's a lot of similar shots, and even just in this trailer and the teaser for this trailer, that are callbacks, which end up being a callback to both of those, which is interesting. But
It
it's
is.
it's also important to note that aircraft carriers were a lot smaller in World War II than they are now, the behemoths that we have now. But
Right.
at the same time, even just comparatively here, and with Godzilla stepping on people and walking down the street and stuff, you can see that they've scaled him back, which I love. because
Yeah.
to me, Shin Godzilla and Legendary Godzilla is both, as much as I love them both, they're just too big. It makes them not really feel of this earth. They're just absolutely massive. So it's kind of hard to think you could ever do anything to deal with them. They're just out of reach, I guess.
Right.
I like that they've scaled him back to a more Showa era size.
I think it's an interesting thing because you can get shots with people in him in the same frame a lot easier. I think that was one of the only things I was really missing from Godzilla versus Kong, especially in the latter parts of the film. You have this huge battle in Hong Kong, this densely populated city, and there's almost nobody in it, like
That's
practically
very true. Yeah, there's no street level stuff going on.
at all.
Right. I
Right.
hadn't really thought about that. I think I was blinded by how much I fucking excuse my French. Oh no.
No,
That
it's
God, I love that scene. That scene is so fun. And seeing
oh, it
Godzilla
is.
on all fours,
It's
that's
absolutely. I just
a
watched
whole
that
other tangent.
again the other night with my son, and Godzilla versus Kong is a really fun movie.
It
It's
is.
not perfect. It's probably not the movie I had originally envisioned, or I don't think it's as good as it could have been, but it's a fun movie, and I feel the same way. Actually, I put it on kind of that Final Wars level where it's like, you know what? Final Wars is not a perfect film, but I really like it.
Yeah,
Like,
big mindless fun.
yeah, exactly. And I get that same vibe from Kong. So let's move forward just a hair here.
なんで俺たちこんなところに呼ばれたんですか？政府は法上国民に伏せています。誰かが貧乏口しかなきゃなんねんだよ。
That was a really cool shot of him grabbing the ship. It's very brief. I don't even know if I can pause, but him reaching up, grabbing the ship, and this scene right here, almost. This kind of reminds me of in G14, a Serizawa talking to people. Does that ring any bells for you too?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this stuff at sea has a lot to do with. In my brain, it calls back to the Lucky Dragon and Godzilla's origins in the '54 film, with all of this stuff happening at sea and all the tests, the atomic tests that were conducted at sea. I feel like that's going to be the origin of Godzilla again, but this time just much earlier, about a decade prior. And I think that's what we're seeing here because if I don't think they're going to make the assumption that Godzilla was uh, in A or B, in the nuclear holocaust, and his origins are on land. I think they're very obviously going to be out at sea, which has always been a big part of Godzilla's origin. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing here is the discovery of Godzilla and or the creation of Godzilla at sea.
Yeah, it's really an interesting series of shots here. Love that. That and I don't want to pause too much, but this gentleman's face, just watching this, like I get like when I first saw this, like this really wrenched at my heart, like that agony he's showing on his face, like it. His face is this. It's weird. This is not a face I see very often in film, and what struck me about it is how real it feels. Because when you're in those moments, like agony comes out in ways that's not pretty, right? It doesn't, look like this handsome actor, in this hugely dramatic moment. It looks like a person in real pain,
Right.
and horrified at what he's.
The trailer it's very bleak. It's very dour. It's very it's just devastating. I mean, it really is. There's a lot of emotion and a lot of pain in this trailer.
Absolutely, and I think this more than anything, like and the girl in the window, those two shots really solidified that for me. It just drove it right home. And I don't know this gentleman's name, but man, oh man, just with a facial expression, he tugged at my heart for sure. That's a really well done shot too.
And that's the line right there. That monster will never forgive us. Such
Yeah.
a good line.
I gotta.
Oh yeah, we got a freeze frame on that shot.
Yes, because I mean, oh, like he does look like something has burnt him up. Looks like the skin on his nose and face. There's like definitely some coals and
Oh yeah,
things like that, like glowing on his neck there. Um, it looks like something big hit him, but it's hard to tell what exactly. I mean, just his movement there is amazing. Like,
yeah, very much like wrenching and pain. A lot of
yeah,
the speculation that I've seen into that everybody else has seen too is that that may or may not be the birth scene of Godzilla right there.
yeah.
It would be very interesting to see if he just got hit by something and that's how he came out of it.
When you look at it too, like watch his jaw, like the way they animated it moving a little bit back and forth during his roar. Like, I mean, it really gives you the impression he's alive. It's pretty great. Let's watch this again. Like,
yeah, I see that. You're absolutely right.
like I can't get enough of this shot. Like, and that is an amazing roar that they gave him. So
Yeah, throwing in the
man,
54 roar was an excellent choice.
yeah. Whoop. Did I accidentally hit play again? Yes, I did. Hang on. There we go. So, yeah, that original roar. I mean, there was just so much good about that. Guys, sorry, I'm just catching up. I was of course looking at the YouTube screen, so we've got some folks in the chat. I want to just make sure we're acknowledging here. Jacob says, oh, this is going way back in the convo, but the Oppenheimer quote from the G14 trailer went nuts with the train wrecked and the bodies everywhere. Was not the 2014 that came out, that's for sure. Minus looks dark. I completely agree. Although I will say 2014, I don't hate the film. It's a good movie. I think it could have been a great movie. And that's the part that breaks my heart about it, is I think they were like this close to making something really special, and it almost hurts more that they barely missed the mark than missing it completely. So that was my take on G14. John, you had a great point. I'm not sure which one, but thank you, Jacob, for throwing that in there for sure. Blake says, "Hey, we appreciate you, Blake. You've been loyally showing up in the comments, so we definitely appreciate you." Umbrella was behind the creation of Godzilla all along. I love it. It is the G virus. That'll be their next game probably. Let's see. And also, -1 still gives me that 2014 marketing vibes, the fear and the mystery. I agree. And man, oh man, I tell you what, that roar at the end, it just chilling. It is absolutely chilling. I love that trailer. I don't know. I mentioned this to you the other day. As a fan, watching Godzilla 2014 come out, or any of the Legendary series, I've had minor gripes or things I'm concerned about or things I'm uncertain of. The anime trilogy, of course, I've had concerns over. Singular Point, I had concerns, and some of them valid and some of them not. And same thing with Shin Godzilla. Some of them valid, some of them not. When I first saw, I was convinced when Shin Godzilla was being promoted that his arms were regenerating. Like, I really thought he was going to have normal shoulders in that movie. I was fighting, like arguing with people over this. I'm like, guys, his arms are regrowing from something, right? And finding out later on, I was dead wrong. I will eat crow the rest of my life for that one. But with this one, I don't have any, there's nothing that I can point to and say, this worries me. At this time, anyway.
Right. Yeah, I think it's because they're 100% going for it. So every other Godzilla film that's been made in recent times has been very fully aware that, okay, we can't, this is never going to be as impactful as the 1954 movie because we're not tackling the same time period and subject material. But Godzilla Minus One is. They're literally minus one. They're going back to the heart of it, and they're tackling the nuclear holocaust. You know, it's. I don't think we're going to see Hiroshima and Nagasaki in this film. I can't say that for sure, but
Right.
we're going to see the direct aftermath of it, and we're going to see the people that actually lived through it, who just lost everyone who didn't, then dealing with Godzilla, right in the heart of the biggest tragedy in Japanese history and one of the worst in world history. So when you say, "Hey, this is the subject material of our Godzilla movie," you automatically have raised the stakes. You've
Right.
automatically said this is going to be a much more devastating, much more emotional, much more impactful fictionalization than Shin Godzilla and everything else. And a whole lot of people died in the earthquakes and typhoons and everything that inspired Shin Godzilla. And Godzilla 2014 is didn't really try and go the same route with that, with connecting it to something direct that had just happened in history. But there is, it's not going to like shock anyone to say it's not the same. It's not the same. Like, I hate how common natural disasters have become right now as we're going through another changing cycle on this planet. But the nuclear holocaust was on another level, and it was not a natural disaster. It was man made. It did not have to happen, and
Right.
the blame lies very obviously on both sides, both
I
with
agree.
Japan and the West, and Japanese historians will tell you that, and so will Western historians. But
Right.
it is the defining tragedy of that era of Japan, and in many ways, it's still today. And so when you dive headfirst into that, you automatically have given yourself permission to just go balls to the wall, for the lack of a better term. And so
Yeah.
everything that was missing from 2014, when we saw those trailers, like the guy said in the chat, okay, holy shit, we got now I become death, destroyer of worlds. We have the quote that Oppenheimer himself, associated his own work with, from ancient history and all this other shit. And it's just like, that's not the movie that we got. It's close,
No.
some really artful, amazing shots, but it's not going to hold a candle to the type of destruction and devastation and emotion I think that Minus One is going to hopefully bring to the table.
I agree, and I also like your point that if you're gonna do this, you have to do it. Like if you're gonna give it, you can't just tiptoe around the Nagasaki and Hiroshima. You can't do it. You've either got to tie it to it or just leave it alone. And I think that's the way to go. I am curious though, just your opinion. Just uh, my own thoughts here, trying to wonder, like, do you think today's generation, Shin Godzilla was very heavily influenced by the natural disasters and of course the Fukushima reactor disaster and things like that, and just the bureaucracy that has really kind of stifled action in those types of situations, and some of the you know just traditions that maybe feel out of place nowadays in Japanese politics. Do you think that the dropping of the atomic weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, do you think that that carries enough weight with this generation to make that same sort of connection with them?
That is the question, and that's kind of, I wrote a very short article about it either earlier this week. I don't. It was a couple of days ago, and that that's the question. I mean, World War II was something that only a handful of people that are still alive now can fathom because they lived through it, and the rest of us just see it in textbooks, and that will never be the same thing. But that is the point of film. That is the point of art in general, and specifically with this medium and this type of storytelling. You can tell a story to an audience and make them feel even just an inkling of what living through that was like. It'll never be on the same par, just like it'll never be on the same par for us Westerners, trying to put ourselves in the shoes of people who are descendants of the survivors of the nuclear holocaust. It will never be the same thing for us in the Western audience. And
Right.
that's one of the things that I said in the article. It's like this is a Japanese film made for a Japanese audience. And that's, it doesn't make it any less enjoyable or interesting to us. But just like Shin Godzilla, there were so many people that were so disappointed with that movie over here. And it doesn't have to be everyone's cup of tea, but it wasn't made for us. It was not
Right.
made for a Western audience. It was a Japanese film made for a Japanese audience. And it hit all the right chords with that modern audience that it was made for, because they realized, okay, the nuclear holocaust is not something that is alive and present in the minds of modern day Japan. So let's touch on all the disasters, the ones that you mentioned and that I mentioned, that people can immediately relate to. It worked. Won the equivalent of the Japanese Oscar and a whole bunch of other awards because of it. Completely revitalized Godzilla in Japan. We've talked about that. He was old and tired before Shin. In those
Right.
the dry spell, the great dry spell after
Yes.
Godzilla Final Wars. Um, so I think that what is happening here with this movie is, it's you could never go back and make another 1954, because that film was made. I mean, not just while people were still picking up the pieces.
Right.
So I think it was smart to A, try and not recreate that directly, and B, not try and connect to it directly, and instead just say, we're going to tell this story about this period in Japan, and we're going to try and help people understand what that was like. But we're also making a giant monster movie. So it's I kind of got off point there, but
No, it was all good stuff.
it's I think this feels like entertainment and art at the same time to me, which is the highest form of filmmaking, in my opinion. I think it's why we all love Steven Spielberg so much, because he can make some really incredible films about some really, really tragic things like the Jewish Holocaust,
Right.
and still have you want to watch it again. It's not something that anyone that's just walking the street in Japan. I don't think people are walking around going and about their daily lives thinking about the nuclear holocaust all the time. But maybe that's the reason this film needs to touch on this subject matter again.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with all those points, and it's funny when you say, it's a Japanese film made for Japanese audiences. Um, really, in America, and thank God for this, we we have tragedies. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to minimize anything, any disaster or things I've had here. Like we, on the scale of, again, the nuclear holocaust, like that is something we don't have like really a good handle on. Personally, I go back. I was alive and I was in high school when 9/11 happened, and I still go back and watch some of the footage, and I purposefully remind myself like just how, because I don't want to lose sight of the humanity of it. It gets so politicized. Same thing, Nazis. I teach Anne Frank every year. Um, I make sure that my students really understand. Like I show them videos of concentration camps. I don't want to forget these things. And I think when you just talk about them for too long, like I feel like we have a habit of they become like, I don't know, just kind of like political talking points in our minds, and we lose sight of what actually happened. But um there's some really terrifying footage of 9/11. There is some gut-wrenching stuff that makes me, sick to my stomach even thinking about at times. Just the tragedy of it, and this is on a scale that we really don't understand. Not really. And you go back and you look at the images of shadows where people were standing, right? And you're just like, the humanity of it is so, it really, I mean, I don't know anyone that really genuinely dives into it that can't connect with that on some level. Like if but it you're right, it's not ours, right? It's not, it didn't happen here. And while we certainly connect as humans, like I think it's going to be interesting to see how it does in the US.
I agree.
Again,
I think you just hit the nail on the head too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, by all means,
I mean
please jump in
that's
because
the
I was
coolest thing
rambling.
about film in general is we are all humans. This is a very human art form, and just like you said, man, we're all going to be moved by this film. I think no matter where you're from, I think it would be naive to think that we can't connect to this film just because we're Westerners. It won't be the same, but that
Right.
does not mean that we will not be completely and utterly moved by the subject matter. And yeah, that I mean, I just got emotional sitting there listening to you talk about it because I've seen enough academic images of the nuclear holocaust. I don't recommend just doing a basic Google dive unless you're very mentally
Right.
prepared for it. Just to throw a flag out there because uh, I don't. I'm a very spiritual person, but I'm not a religious person. But I think that if there was ever a hell on earth, it was the nuclear holocaust. Uh, I'm like getting choked up sitting here.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
it's
you know,
rough.
like I have Jewish family on my mom's side, and it doesn't take anything away from that. The concentration camps were also hell on earth. There's the genocide of the indigenous Native Americans here was also a hell on earth. But
Yes,
the way
yes.
that Christianity talks about hell, fire and brimstone, that was very unique to Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah,
What happened on land in an extremely densely populated area has not happened before or since the existence of everything, for as far as we know. Um, and the imagery from that is something that you do not unsee.
right.
So I can't even imagine having being a survivor of that. And they touch on that in this film too. I'm not sure if that's exactly what's being referenced, but one of the older Japanese women in the trailer pushes, who very clearly is someone she cares about enough to be family, telling him he's a disgrace. There was so much survivor's guilt in Japan. The people that lived through the nuclear holocaust, there was a lot of why did I live? Why did everyone else not live? There was the reason that those bombs were dropped is obviously because they were created, but obviously because Japan had a very, very, very resonant emotional core of never giving up, never surrendering,
Right.
unless it was purposeful, and then they had names for that, kamikaze, whatever you want to say. But
Right.
the Japanese were not going to give up. They were never going to surrender. And there was a lot of survivor's guilt in Japan from we brought this on ourselves, which is not necessarily true because it takes two to tango.
I
Um,
yeah, there was fault plenty of blame to go around. Yeah.
right. And those who did survive, survivor's guilt is something that I have hard articulating because I don't have it. Like
Right.
some of my friends do that were in New York when 9/11 happened. But just like you're saying, yeah, I mean, it's that is a good point of reference for us, for our generation in America, because I remember I was in Miss Kelly's English class in seventh grade, sitting in the second row, looking up at the old box TV that was mounted to the cinder block wall that was
Right.
painted tan. I can tell you everything about that room. I couldn't even name any of my other seventh grade teachers for you right now, but I remember
Right.
every single detail about when that happened, what was happening, what we were watching. And I grew up in East Tennessee, right next to Oak Ridge, and we Oak Ridge received a call from President Bush and said, "You need to send everyone within this mile radius home because we think they're going to start coming after our uh, nuclear plants and reservoirs next." So, I mean, it was one of those days that you'll never forget any of that. And so, a lot of
I agree.
conservative people right now is okay. Well, the majority, 99.9% of those people, are no longer alive in Japan. So, to say it's going to be more important for them than it is for us is kind of ludicrous. And I think no, that's bullshit. If there's so many people over there that are alive that their parents grew up in the rubble, literally, of the nuclear holocaust, and they never knew their grandparents because they're shown a photo when they're small of, this is your father, he was a soldier, he disappeared in World War II, or these are all our neighbors, this is the block we used to live in, we weren't in Hiroshima or Nagasaki when it happened, but everyone we ever knew or loved was, and now they're all gone and we're still here. And that stuff is passed down through families and history. And um, there is no through line. Uh, there's no connection there for us emotionally and mentally, as Westerners, as tangible as that. But then, just like you're saying, like you said, which I loved what you said, we're all human, and that's something I really try and focus on myself, because we're in
For
such
sure.
a divided world right now.
Absolutely.
But it's the type of stuff that we never need to forget. Like you said, we all need to see, we all need to learn about. So, for the love of all that's holy, it never happens again. You know,
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
talking about Godzilla, but now we're just having a very deep philosophical discussion, which
Right.
is what Godzilla does, and I think
Right.
that's why we love him so much.
It's beautiful. It's really everything you said there was beautiful, and I love it. And you bring up some one. It's kind of why I became an English teacher, because I truly believe we talk a lot about representation nowadays, and those things are important. I want kids to be able to see themselves, but the beauty of writing is I truly believe I like anyone can connect to a character. Okay, when you're reading and you make that connection, like, and you're reading a work of art, anyone can make that connection regardless of where you're from, whatever. It's available for everyone. And similarly, on that human level, when we look at history and we look at these sorts of things, it I think we have that ability as people, to do that and to make those connections. And certainly, one of the reasons I last year, I got in touch with, in Buffalo, New York. There's a Jewish federation, and they put me in touch with a Holocaust survivor that is still living, and he was gracious enough to come out to our school and speak to the students.
Wow.
And I loved that experience so much for them, because it's one they I told all my students, like, this is what you're going to be, some of the last generation to experience this, and that you like. And they did say, hey, would you be willing to have a second generation out, kind of thing. And of course I'm open to that, but I know the impact is not going to be the same, because it really is something that is different when you were an eyewitness to it. And it was
Yeah,
just
and
such
those
a
people
cool
won't be, just
experience.
like you said. I mean, these ladies and gentlemen will not be here much longer at all. I
Right.
mean, we're losing these survivors of World War II on all sides at a very rapid pace, and we are the people that are living right now are the last that will ever speak to them.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just that's an it almost equally as wild thought.
Right. And I agree. So the fact that this Godzilla movie can spark this discussion and we can get into this
Yes.
is kind of crazy to think about, because it goes beyond cool giant robot dragons fighting, organic dragons that breathe atomic fire. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
bigger than that. Those things are awesome, but this film tackling this subject matter, it just goes so far beyond uh your basic sci-fi stories. And what I love about Godzilla just as a character is he's been able to not only do all of those things and have a rate that sort of range, but it's his adaptability that really gives him the longevity that he's had as a character, unparalleled longevity as a character. It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. We think of it as a niche genre, and then it's like James Bond doesn't even touch the number of appearances that Godzilla has. It's
Mhm.
pretty impressive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We were talking about that last time too. I think, like, for us, the closest thing in the U.S. is Batman, because he's been campy, he's been dark, yada yada yada. But Batman's also, unless you look at very niche otherworld, elseworld tales, he's never really been the villain like Godzilla has. But yeah, I was just watching Godzilla versus Hedorah on the Pluto channel earlier today, just because I will always watch that movie if it's on, because I
Yes,
unapologetically love it. And yeah, that's
I
one of
do
the best.
too.
that's one of the best instances. Godzilla himself wasn't the allegory for human caused pollution, natural disasters, and stuff, but Hedorah was. And dude, that movie is not everyone's cup of tea. It's so 70s, so avant garde, but that will always be one of the best examples of Godzilla being so malleable, like you were saying. And oh man, that movie is just it's a really, really, really good. It's really good at what it does.
Yeah,
It's really, really good at showing you pollution sucks. This is the type of stuff that happens in fiction. It's a giant monster, but this type of destruction and nastiness and death is what will happen if we continue down this path. And I think that's kind of the thing that's been missing from a lot of Godzilla movies that aren't as successful with the public. GMK, excuse me, kind of touched on it, but it was mostly an entertainment vehicle. So I think people really resonated with it. And then by the time Final Wars came around, big, loud, silly, fun movie, but there is nothing there that emotional core, that historical core is absent.
right.
And I
Yeah,
think
it's not
that's
there.
that's why we never discuss it on the same level as some of these other films. Doesn't mean it's bad entertainment or it's worthless. It just means it's a different type of movie. It's
Yeah,
entertainment. I think all movies can be equal parts entertainment and art, but some are a lot more entertainment and some are a lot more art. And something
right.
like Godzilla Final Wars or even GMK, most Godzilla movies ended up being big dumb entertainment, but there will always be those ones that stand out as art, like 1954. And
Right.
that's the vibe that I feel like a lot of us are getting on both sides of the Pacific from Minus One. And I think that's why we're all so damn excited.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's even a contrast. One, it's kind of again kind of a perfect illustration of what we're talking about is you have two different series of films being produced simultaneously that are drastically different
Mhm.
in tone, in just overall mood, and all of those things. So that's amazing in and of itself. You have this campy, I shouldn't say campy, although it had its moments, like, you know, let's drill down to the core of the earth with our fire breath, like that type of thing. But like you have this fun ride, which was Godzilla versus Kong, versus this super serious, artsy type of film. Um, and Godzilla's rode that line at different times. Even Godzilla versus Mothra had like the sort of like you know evils of capitalism and stuff like that. And there's some of those themes present and things like that, or uncontrolled, unrestrained capitalism, I guess,
Right.
might be. And it was just so interesting to me. You're right. Some of those ones we really hold in high regard kind of have that more artsy quality to them. I think I've always called Biollante a little bit poetic in nature. Like, there's a certain amount of richness to it, emotionally and things like that. So, just all really good points. And one of these days, we got to talk about GMK because, uh, I don't dislike the movie, but it's not one of my favorites.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know,
Good.
I
That's
know,
why we should discuss it. This is the
I
best.
agree.
If you're just gonna watch two dudes sit around and be like, "Oh, we both love this," like no one cares. But yeah, if
Right.
we have very different viewpoints on a movie, we should totally
Yeah,
like.
we should. That definitely needs to be a topic because we could probably do a whole show on it. And I want a chance to rewatch it again. I haven't watched it within the past 6 months, so I definitely want to watch it again beforehand. But as a giant fan of the Gamera trilogy, I don't know if I was overhyped going into GMK. I don't know if I was disappointed that our boy Anguirus and Varen, didn't make it back in. But there was something. I was not feeling the human plot, especially. Like I find even the Kyu series, I kind of, which was weaker to me, but I really seem to like that one a little bit better. So we'll have to have that discussion at some point here. Blake jumped in with a couple of points. he says if you go back to the scene where the guy is yelling into the air in the trailer, you can see some black rain falling down, which is a reference to the black rain that appeared from the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. It was radioactive rain. Yeah, I think that's a powerful callback
Yeah,
and a good point that people have caught
yeah,
for
that's a real good
sure.
catch.
And he also says he likes Godzilla versus Hedorah as well, but the pollution message is kind of bad in this movie because you have a monster that represents the horrors of nukes and defeats a monster that represents the horrors of pollution. So, what's the message trying to say? We should nuke pollution. And I think at that point, what they were doing was Godzilla had kind of evolved into a solid hero at
Yeah,
that point in his history. So what they tried to do with that movie was bring back some of those thematic elements, that the serious statements about the world that Godzilla used to make, as we've referenced a couple of times already, and really just try to tackle that in a different way uh, without tainting Godzilla's character at the time, because that was what was popular. That's what they were looking for, was that hero type of character, and I think it was pretty successful. Um, I think it was handled pretty well, and at the time, I don't think Godzilla was all that much of an allegory for the bomb in that era, in that
not at
particular.
all. I mean, the couple of films prior to that are all you need to watch for evidence of that. I mean, Ishiro Honda said several times that one of his favorite movies, Godzilla movies that he ever made, was All Monsters Attack, which was the only 100% children's movie ever made in the series. And before that, we had Son of Godzilla and several other films where Godzilla was the hero. So yeah, there's no nuclear imagery or references that you're beaten over the head with in Godzilla versus Hedorah, because in that movie he's just a big hero,
Yeah,
and that's what he was. Throughout the '70s, he was a big, friendly-looking hero. He was not a nuclear radiation scar wearing monstrosity that he was in '54, and in some ways, '55 in the movies that followed a little bit after. So yeah, I think uh, Toho and their creative team was smart in realizing if we want to tell a compelling villain story, we have to make new villains like Hedorah, because Godzilla
right.
was very clearly no longer a giant nuclear allegory of devastation for the Earth and humanity.
I find it interesting too that really Godzilla wasn't able to beat. Now this happens multiple times throughout the series, but he wasn't actually able to beat him on his own. Like, in fact, if it wasn't for the humans in that film, Godzilla would have been toast. And I think that kind of one kind of underlines the fact that Godzilla was a hero, because he has this sort of underdog type of comeback in the film, but also like it. I think it underscores like the dangers that they were trying to highlight of pollution. We get some of the most graphic, actually probably the most graphic death scenes from a monster since the original film. I would say so. It was really kind of an interesting take, and something that I think rode the line between campy and serious in a way. There are some scenes in there that are a bit unsettling at times. Even during the battle, uh, there's some shots where there's silence, and it's almost kind of like I said, it kind of gives you a little bit of a creepy feeling, like, ooh, this is weird. Like, it
Yeah,
definitely not the something we're used to.
yeah, but you're also, I mean, you're completely right from the other standpoint, Blake. I mean, that's why people got tired of Godzilla movies in the '70s, and by the time Terror of Mechagodzilla came around, it was not a very successful film, critically or financially in Japan. They still do not see it as one of their favorites. It's usually in the top, the bottom five in any of their rankings. People just got sick of that version of Godzilla. They were tired of seeing the hero over and over again. And then it took 10 more years for him to come back in Return of Godzilla as a villain. And then that ignited, a whole nother 10 years of Godzilla movies. So I think that just goes back to what Matt was saying, that the fact that Godzilla is so malleable and he can be so many different things to us is the reason that we're looking at the 70th anniversary, excuse me, next year, which is going to be wild. Um,
Absolutely.
70
He
years of it.
mentions he'd like to see a Hedora solo movie. That'd be an interesting take.
Yeah,
Um, you
I'm
know,
so down for that.
yeah, I know.
He is the kaiju that I'm just begging Legendary to bring in. But they're so far down the Kong rabbit hole now that I don't think we'll ever see that. But I would love to see a modern Hedora made with Hollywood visual effects, or even what Toho's doing right now. Man, if they brought Hedora in as like the enemy, if there's a sequel to Godzilla Minus One, oh, I'd be so down for that.
Absolutely. Do you think we're going to get more legendary films after this?
I don't know. I think it's all riding on this movie. We're going to get the TV series next November. We know that now that we got the release date, but I'm having a hard time getting hyped for Godzilla X Kong, mostly because I'm just really, really looking forward to Minus One.
Right.
So it's kind of eclipsing everything else. But everything I've seen just looks like more of the same. Even the title, instead of Godzilla versus Kong, it's Godzilla X Kong, the new empire. And we're going to get some new monsters, which I'm always thankful for. That's going to be super cool. And I'm interested to see it. But Godzilla King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong had very similar flavors. And I enjoy them both. I think Godzilla versus Kong is a much more rewatchable film because it's it's less convoluted and it's better written. Like you said, it's no masterpiece, but it's a fun watch from beginning to end. And
Absolutely.
I think they're making the big Hollywood mistake. They're making more for the sake of making more, so they can make more money because Godzilla versus Kong was so successful during the pandemic. I think that is by far and away the main focus of that movie is just make more money from a proven formula instead of making this movie because someone had an idea that needed to be a story that was told. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, actually, I completely agree because I the the premise of Godzilla X Kong, I'm a bit underwhelmed by. Um, when I first saw that there was this other primate kaiju, I was like, I'm like, really? Like, that's what they're going with? Like, I was really apprehensive about it. And this goes back to, again, a credit to Minus One, me not really having any complaints or concerns currently with what I'm seeing, unless something changes drastically between the trailer and the film. But with this, I'm not really sure how I feel. People have jokingly dubbed him, Long Kong and stuff like that, which I love. I love that nickname.
Long Kong.
And Long Kong, yep. And but I was just like, I'm not really sure I'm looking for another Kong right now. Like
Yeah.
and it's unclear if he's even like part of his if he's part of his race. Why is he almost a different species of ape? And like there's just so many questions surrounding it, and I don't know that they're going to get satisfying answers.
Oh, yeah.
Because like you
I
said,
don't think that's really been their focus with the legendary movies
no.
is satisfying answers. I think you're right on the money there.
Yeah,
I mean, if you've been keeping up with the Reddit and all of the uh, the leaks out there, I mean, we're going to get other monsters in this movie, and the orangutan Kong, Mr. Long Kong, is not going to be the big main bad, from what the rumors are saying. But
what do you have? Because last I knew, it was him and the I forget the other kaiju's name. Uh, she what the reptilian creature with the spiky back. I'm drawing a blank on his name right
yeah,
now, but
I don't know. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. It's
gotcha.
a lot of like he's the original Titan lore and all this stuff. It's interesting, but I definitely think that's a subject for another time.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that we'll have to do some spoiler alerts for that one for sure. And Blake says if GXK does well at the box office, then we'll definitely get more because Hollywood loves that money.
Yeah.
I agree. It'll just come down to uh what kind of more we're getting. Is it going to be something valuable where What seems to happen is rather than continue to put out a great product that everyone wants to see, is they just start milking it and kind of
100%.
phoning it in. And I think we've seen the effects of that with Marvel and what the result is. Like Marvel has really fallen from grace,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
completely like, man, I used to be there at every midnight premiere back when that was actually a thing, and just adored those movies. Growing up on comic books and Marvel, and being obsessed with Spider-Man and Wolverine and the original Marvel movies that came out before Marvel Studios was a thing, and now it's just like I just don't care anymore. And I'll watch the Disney Plus shows, but when I have time, I mean, I still haven't seen Ant-Man 3. Like I saw the
yeah.
trailer and I was like, I love Paul Rudd and I don't even want to see this movie. Like I just don't care.
Yeah,
It's like so
I
poorly driven.
likewise, I'm a huge fan of Moon Knight. I know that's like weird. Like I think I was like the only fan of Moon Knight before he got his own series, like practically. But I still have like most of his number one issues and everything of his solo series and stuff. I always loved that character. And even I was watching it, I'm just like, meh. Like I just not been feeling the Marvel stuff. I feel like
Yeah,
it's underwhelming. And just kind of phoning it in. So
definitely.
that's been my opinion, and that is my big fear for Godzilla X Kong is that they are going to phone it in, try to just rinse and repeat, and it's going to
Yep.
fail miserably because
Yeah.
you know
Well,
uh,
I mean, we'll
we'll
see.
see.
Hopefully it doesn't. I think that the series Monarch Legacy of Monsters looks like it has much more fruitful creative origins and direction. So if there's anything to be excited about, honestly, I think it's that series. They're telling a multi generational story and a lot of other things that could be really really cool to see with Godzilla at the heart of it or as a supporting part of the mythos. But I think that's one of the things that makes Shin Godzilla so cool is they knew right out the gate, like this is going to be a one off. We're not going to try and milk this and turn this into the new Godzilla series. We're going to make this as a statement. It is a film. It is a story. It is wholly contained. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And we got Shin Ultraman instead, which I think was just a very incredibly smart move. I love that movie, by the way. Shin Ultraman,
Yeah,
so fun.
um,
And so
yeah,
I'm very interested to see, like, is minus one going to be another one off, or is it going to be the beginning of a series of period piece Godzilla films? Because that would be super cool.
that'd be interesting for sure. And the it raises a whole bunch of other questions. And you're right. I kind of appreciate the fact one because of the weirdness of Shin Godzilla. I do appreciate like a lot of folks want to see what happens next and would like to see a sequel. They'd like to see what are the tail people and what are they going to do and what's the next evolution. And I just think that there is no way to continue that story in a way that would satisfy everyone. Like almost so like you are going to alienate half the fans of that movie no matter what way you go with it.
Yeah.
So I am perfectly content leaving Shin Godzilla in its own little universe. It told a great story, let it be. But to your point about Godzilla Minus One, like are is it going to kick off a new series? And it brings up an interesting question because uh going back to the Heisei series, which I find the closest parallel to what we're about to get, even though 85 was clearly tied to 54. Um, you make this really impactful, scary Godzilla film, and then gradually that story gets diluted. It inevitably has to happen. So, given the choice, you know, do you would you I guess, rather have this be a one off film that remains artistically and just emotionally impactful as a self contained story? Or do you take the inspiration that this is going to give for the series, knowing that it's eventually going to diminish the impact of this first film?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to. I think one of the best examples of that in history is Empire Strikes Back. Completely, uh, people didn't know what to think of it when it came out, just because it was very different from Star Wars. but it did nothing but improve everything about it, in my opinion. So if there's a reason to tell the story, then go for it. And I think one of the interesting things when thinking about this with Minus One is that it's a period piece. So Toho has brought some really, really masterful creatives and filmmakers in to make this film. So people of that caliber would obviously think, okay, well, then Legendary is doing the modern Godzilla thing. So there's not really any point in us doing the same thing at the same time. So what if we start our own Godzilla series as a period series? Like what if we go back in time and we tell our own Godzilla movies through the evolution of Japan in the 20th century? That would be cool as hell. Maybe that's
Yeah,
what we'll do. Or maybe it'll be another one off. Maybe Toho has realized that, Shin Godzilla was successful for many reasons. And they're going to try and capture lightning in a bottle twice and make another one off. I mean, that's all the Millennium series was, except for Kiryu, was a bunch of one
right,
off. Some of them were, the majority of them were loosely tied directly to 54. And then, Final Wars was loosely tied to everything.
right.
But that we got 5 years of movies that were all self-contained tales, and I think that they found that there's pros and cons to that. And I think the Kiryu films, I love those movies so much because it does tell that continuing serialized sort of filmmaking. I love that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
in
Star Wars.
hindsight,
That's the fun
given
thing about
their
the hate thing.
similarities just in thematically and in design, I really kind of almost wish they'd have tied G2K, Megaguirus, and the Kyu films together.
Mhm.
Personally, I kind of have I don't use the term headcanon very often, but in my mind, I would kind of enjoy that if those were all the same series. But knowing that's not the case. Um, but yeah, you're right. It really doesn't have to, depending on what comes after the fact. It doesn't have to diminish the first one, and it will be interesting to see whether they try to. I think this design, and I believe it was Matt Frank that said it, but I could be mistaken. So hopefully, I'm not misquoting you out there if you're listening, Matt. But um, I believe he said something to the effect of Toho was looking for like a new like base representation of Godzilla, and that this may be it finally kind of replacing the Heisei version of Godzilla in most media. And I do get that vibe from it. I think he looks like an updated and obviously a CGI version that's a little bit more tries to be a little bit more realistic, than the old Suitmation. I absolutely love the design, but I'm curious to see if he sticks around or not because
Yeah,
we've seen him now in the ride, and now, of course, this film. So it'll be really interesting ride the next couple of years to see what's going to happen.
it really will. And that's an interesting point too, because that's what Shin Godzilla became. So much so that he replaced the Heisei statue, the very famous statue uh, in Japan. So it would be, it's maybe they'll build a statue of this guy. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens, and you know, um, Blake made a couple of comments about Star Wars, the prequels, and say basically Marvel should have stopped after Endgame. Toy Story should have stopped after 3. I agree with you on that one. Toy Story 4 was terrible.
Yeah, pretty
Uh,
much.
well, yeah, Star Wars should have stopped after 6. I'm with you on that one. Um, I'm a purist to the original trilogy, mostly because I'm a fan of the extended universe that was a thing back in the 90s.
Oh yeah,
The prequels. Um, the reason I have a problem with the prequels is because Star Wars had, in my opinion, the one of the greatest universes ever created, and we're Tolkien fans, right? So we appreciate uh, the meticulous way that he really crafted Middle Earth. And he was so intentional and, very rarely made like errors that contradicted one another kind of thing in it. So when the prequels came out, and not only did it have things that contradicted the original trilogy, but kind of overwrote a lot of the novels I spent my childhood reading. You know, going back to the Thrawn trilogy, Han Solo trilogy, you know, Shadows of the Empire was one of my favorite stories. You know, Children of the Jedi, Dark Saber, all these different Dark Saber before there was actually a Dark Saber. Like most folks are probably like, "What's he talking about?" Like it was a miniature version of the Death Star laser, basically. Like not miniature, but it was essentially the Death Star, but it wasn't shaped like a moon. It was built by Durga the Hutt, and there was all these cool stories I fell in love with, and I felt like the prequels really didn't care actually. So I was kind of upset when those came out, but that was a whole tangent for
Yeah.
another
That-
day, another show. This is a kaiju themed show.
yeah, man. And no, it's all good. You know, we're all probably huge Star Wars nerds too. All my Star Wars stuff
Absolutely.
is right over there, including all of the original, now known as Legends. But I have all the original copies that I grew with over there of all those books. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that Toho is really smart with. Instead of trying to retcon stuff, they literally just say, "Screw it, we're just going to start fresh." You know, they've done it
And
a
and I
dozen
can
times
respect that.
before now.
Like I can actually respect that
Yeah,
and say, okay, you know what, that makes sense on a number of levels. Like,
yeah. So
yeah, just make a new
instead of
story.
stepping on toes or trying to rewrite what we've already done, let's just tell another story with the same character that people love, and see what
Right.
happens.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there's definitely something to be said for it. I love both ways, but one is definitely a lot easier than the other because, I mean, Tolkien was the exception. He was exceptional at what he did in the world that he crafted, and really, I mean, wrote the book on world building in Middle Earth. So it's tough to pull that off, but I think it's worth it as well. And on the flip side, I think you know what Godzilla is doing is awesome too because we get to see so many different flavors of it. And going back to our original point, which is probably a good logical you know stopping place, is going back to our original point is that he has just been so culturally malleable and continues to thrive because of that. So definitely something that I can appreciate and continue to, you know, since I was 3 years old watching Godzilla versus Megalon, you know, just absolutely fell in love with the character and never looked back. So, do you have any, what can we kind of plug for you tonight? You know, obviously Screonk.com is back and better than ever.
Yeah, man.
And
Just hanging out and writing articles with Screonk. You know, we're on Instagram at screonk.com, spelled out just like that. But if you type Screonk into the search on Instagram, you'll find us there. We're on Facebook too, which is where I'm streaming this. Thanks to Matt. So thanks to everybody who's watching and who has been enjoying Screonk coming back. Thanks for all the feedback for the articles. I really appreciate it. And yeah, man, I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm going to start posting these videos as articles on Screonk too, so more people can hopefully see them and enjoy them and give us critiques on what they would like to hear more of and what they would like to hear less of.
absolutely, yeah, always open to
Doing this, I
feedback.
want to do more. So bring on the feedback.
I think we have some great discussions, John. It never gets old talking with you.
Same,
Like I
buddy.
said, we've been doing this a long time, you know, together through multiple mediums at this point, through forums and AIM and
Yeah.
you know, just a number of wonderful you know, technologies we've been able to connect through, and it never gets old. So I want to thank you for that.
Thanks
Obviously,
for having me.
the if you guys are into fantasy, John wrote a couple of books in the Titha May series. Go check those out. You can order them on Amazon. Kaijutopia.com is coming back. I don't know what we'll do with it yet. We'll see. But for now, you can follow us on Twitter there. Sector 7 is going to be launching a campaign as well. If you haven't checked out our kaiju, I think you're going to love them. And we've got an awesome story in addition to the giant monsters. So please go and check that out. And if you got nothing else, I think this is a good place to wrap things up this week.
That's it, man. I appreciate you hosting as always, Matt. Let's do it again soon.
Yes, absolutely. We'll see you everyone soon. Have a great night.
Thank you guys for chatting with us and your comments, Blake. You guys are awesome. And
Yes, thank you, Blake and Jacob.
see you
Have a
guys.
great night. So